You know, Alex, maybe you should dye your hair red. Apparently, it's a ticket to easy money.
What? Where's this coming from?
I'm serious. That's exactly how a pawnbroker named Jabez Wilson landed a bizarre, high-paying job.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What kind of job pays for having red hair?
So, Wilson's assistant, Vincent Spaulding, shows him this newspaper ad for the Red-Headed League. The only requirement? Bright red hair.
That sounds like a setup already.
That's what you'd think. But Wilson applies anyway. He goes to this office packed with red-haired men all trying to get the job.
Let me guess, he gets it?
Of course he does. His task? Copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica 4 hours a day. That's it. And he gets paid handsomely.
No way. That makes no sense. Who pays someone to do that?
Exactly. But Wilson doesn't question it. Until one day he shows up and the league is gone. Office closed. A sign says it's dissolved, with no explanation.
Just like that, no warning?
Yep. That's when Wilson goes to Holmes, trying to figure out why someone would pay him to do nothing.
And Holmes immediately knows there's more to this than meets the eye.
So, Wilson's sitting across from Holmes, telling this strange story about the Red-Headed League. Holmes, of course, listens intently, not laughing or dismissing it. He's intrigued.
That does sound odd. A league just for people with red hair? I mean, who even comes up with something like that?
Exactly what Holmes thought. He starts asking questions. First, about Vincent Spaulding, Wilson's assistant. Young, quick-witted, and oddly eager to work for half the usual wages.
Half the wages? That's a bit unusual, isn't it? Why would anyone take less money unless there's something in it for them?
Right? And then Wilson mentions this odd little detail. Spaulding's always disappearing into the basement of the shop. Says he's into photography.
Photography? In a basement? That sounds off. What could he possibly be doing down there all the time?
Holmes notices that too, but he doesn't say anything yet. He just listens. Then Wilson goes on. Spaulding finds this newspaper ad about the Red-Headed League and practically pushes Wilson to apply for it.
So, his assistant is the one who really wanted him to go? That's suspicious. Why would Spaulding care so much about a job for someone else?
Exactly. Holmes asks more. What did the office look like? Who interviewed him? Wilson describes a small room filled with red-haired men and the manager, a stout gentleman named Duncan Ross, with flaming red hair himself.
A whole crowd of red-haired people competing for some weird desk job? This is starting to sound like a prank.
That's what you'd think. But Wilson got the job. His hair was exactly what they were looking for. His only task was to copy out the Encyclopedia Britannica for 4 hours a day.
Wait, what? They hired him to just copy an encyclopedia? That makes no sense. Weeks? And he didn't think to ask why? I mean, who pays someone for that?
That's the mystery. But one day, Wilson shows up to the office and finds it locked, with a sign saying the Red-Headed League had been dissolved. No warning, no explanation. Just gone.
So they vanish into thin air after all that? Yeah, something's seriously off here.
And Holmes knows it. The moment Wilson leaves, you can tell. Holmes is already figuring this out. So Holmes watches Wilson leave, and instead of giving any answers, he just sits there, thinking.
Just thinking? No theories, no conclusions. That's not like him.
Exactly. But that's when you know something's off, when Holmes doesn't say what he's thinking. After a long pause, he simply suggests a walk.
A walk? In the middle of a mystery? That's weird.
Watson thought the same thing. But off they go, strolling through the streets near Wilson's pawn shop. Holmes is observing everything, buildings, signs, street corners, and Spaulding, with dirt on his dress.
He's looking for something, isn't he? But what? The Red-Headed League is gone. What could he possibly find by walking around?
Holmes doesn't say. He just taps his walking stick on the pavement outside Wilson's shop, listening carefully.
Wait, tapping the pavement? Why would he...
Again, no explanation. Just a faint smile as he moves along. But there's something in his eyes, like he's found the first real piece of the puzzle.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What did he hear? What did he notice?
That's the thing. He doesn't tell Watson. Not yet. He only says one cryptic thing before they leave. I believe the affair is more serious than I expected.
More serious? What does that even mean? What's he figured out that no one else has?
That's what makes Holmes Holmes. And by now, he's already planning his next move, but he's keeping it close to his chest. So, after that cryptic comment, Holmes doesn't rush to explain anything. Instead, he casually suggests to Watson that they meet later that night, at Baker Street, around 10.
10 at night? That's a strange time for a follow-up. What's he planning?
Watson asks the same thing, but Holmes just smiles and says, "I'll need your company, and perhaps your revolver."
A revolver? Okay, now this just got serious. From a missing job post for red-haired men to needing a gun? What on earth is Holmes expecting to happen?
That's the beauty of it. He gives nothing away. But you can tell he knows something's about to go down. Watson, of course, is completely in the dark, just like you right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the dark here. But if Holmes thinks they'll need a gun, this isn't just about some silly league anymore.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so gripping, because whatever Holmes has figured out, it's dangerous. And the worst part, he's not telling Watson or us what it is. Not yet.
So they just wait until 10?
Yep. The tension builds, hour by hour, until Watson arrives at Baker Street that night, his revolver tucked away, unsure if they're walking into a joke or something deadly.
And Holmes? He's calm, isn't he?
Calm as ever. He's ready. He knows something's coming, something big. So at 10 o'clock, Watson shows up at Baker Street, revolver in hand, a little on edge. Holmes, of course, is waiting, cool as ever, and without much explanation, they head out into the night.
Just like that? No more hints about what's going on? That's not exactly comforting. But I'm guessing Watson doesn't press him too hard.
Exactly. By now, Watson knows better than to ask for answers Holmes isn't ready to give. So they take a cab through the dark streets of London, and before long they arrive, not at a pawn shop, but at a bank.
A bank? That feels completely out of left field. What does a bank have to do with Wilson's shop and the Red-Headed League?
That's what Watson's thinking too. But Holmes just leads him inside, where they meet a man, Mr. Merriweather, the bank manager.
So Merriweather's already there, waiting for them?
Yep, but he doesn't seem to know the full story either. He's nervous, though, and Holmes takes charge immediately, telling them they need to act tonight.
Wait, act on what? Holmes still hasn't explained anything, has he?
Not a word. And that's what makes this moment so tense. Everyone's in the dark, except Holmes. And whatever's about to happen, it's happening now. So, Holmes leads Watson and Mr. Merriweather through the dark corridors of the bank. The air is thick with anticipation. Merriweather, trying to mask his unease, mutters something about losing his evening of whist, a card game, because of this mysterious emergency.
I mean, I get his frustration, being dragged out late at night without knowing why. That would drive anyone a little mad.
Exactly. But Holmes, with that calm certainty, just smiles and tells him that missing his game tonight might save him thousands of pounds. That shuts Merriweather up real quick.
I can imagine. So, where are they headed?
Into the bank's vault. Merriweather unlocks this heavy iron door and leads them down into a cellar lined with crates. Holmes takes a long, thoughtful look around. And then, in true Sherlock fashion, he just lies down on the cold stone floor.
What? Lies down in a bank vault?
Yup, flat on his face with his ear to the ground. He stays like that for a full minute, completely still, while Merriweather and Watson exchange confused glances.
That's unsettling. What's he listening for?
The faintest sound of movement. After a moment, Holmes stands up, brushes himself off, and announces that they are not alone, that someone is working beneath their feet. Digging.
Digging? As in tunneling into the vault?
Precisely. And Holmes says, quite calmly, that within an hour they'll catch the thieves red-handed. So, with that unsettling revelation, Holmes calmly tells Merriweather to extinguish the lantern. The cellar falls into complete darkness.
Okay, that's already intense. Sitting in a pitch-black vault, waiting for thieves to break in, that's not for the faint of heart.
Exactly. And Merriweather, who's clearly not used to this sort of thing, starts whispering about the bank's French gold, 30,000 Napoleons, stored right there in that very cellar.
Wait, so the vault's not just holding random valuables. It's got a fortune in gold coins?
That's right. And Holmes already knew that, of course. He mentions that this vault has been sitting untouched for months. Just the kind of temptation that could inspire a long-term, carefully planned heist.
So, he figured out the gold was the target. But he still hasn't explained how he connected Wilson's pawn shop to this vault.
Not yet. And that's what makes this scene so suspenseful. Holmes keeps everything to himself until the moment is right.
I'd be going crazy in that silence. Just sitting there in the dark, knowing someone's about to break in,
That's exactly how it feels. Time drags on, the silence stretches, and then they hear it. A faint scraping sound. Soft, rhythmic, and growing louder.
The tunnelers. They're almost through, aren't they? I can feel the tension already. Sitting there in the pitch dark, waiting to catch criminals.
And then, after a few minutes, a stone in the floor starts to move. Slowly, silently, it lifts up. And a hand appears through the hole.
That sounds terrifying. Just seeing a hand emerge from the floor like that.
I know, right? And that's when Holmes signals quietly the moment they've been waiting for. The trap is about to spring. The slab of stone lifts, and out of the hole climbs a man with a pale face, holding a lantern. Behind him, another figure begins to emerge.
Just as Holmes expected, two of them.
Exactly. As soon as the first man is fully into the vault, Holmes springs forward. He grabs the intruder's collar and says, "Gentlemen, you have now the chance to do exactly what I tell you."
Holmes doesn't waste a second. He's always so direct.
But the man he's grabbed isn't about to surrender quietly. He tries to break free, and a fierce struggle breaks out. Watson and Merriweather rush to help, and after a short but intense fight, they manage to overpower him.
What about the second guy?
He's quick. Too quick. As soon as he sees his accomplice caught, he dives back down the hole and disappears into the tunnel.
So, one gets away.
For the moment, yes. But Holmes isn't worried. He calmly says they'll have the police waiting at the other end of that tunnel. The game isn't over yet. With the first man securely tied, Holmes doesn't waste a second. He strikes a match, and in the dim light, he takes a good look at their captive.
Let me guess. He's not just some ordinary thief.
Not at all. Holmes calmly says, "John Clay, I presume?"
So, Holmes already knew who he was dealing with.
Exactly. John Clay, a notorious criminal, known for his cleverness and ruthlessness. But Clay, despite being caught, doesn't lose his composure. He actually smiles and says, "You have me, I confess. But I assure you, you'll find it hard to catch my friend."
That's some confidence for a guy who just crawled out of a hole and got tackled.
Holmes simply replies, "No doubt, but I think your friend may find it hard to escape the police waiting above."
Holmes always has everything covered.
And he's right. Without missing a beat, he sends Watson to fetch the officers. The game of cat and mouse is nearly over, so Watson hurries off, and in no time, he returns with the police officers. They take John Clay into custody, and as expected, when the police check the other end of the tunnel, his accomplice is already caught.
Holmes really did have it all figured out. Down to the last detail.
Exactly. Once everything is settled, Holmes, Watson, and Merriweather return to the bank vault. And there it is, the French gold, untouched, just as Holmes had predicted.
The Red-Headed League was just a cover. All that effort just to get Wilson out of the way while they dug that tunnel.
Precisely. The League never really existed. It was all a clever ruse to occupy Wilson during business hours, giving John Clay and his accomplice time to dig through to the vault.
And Wilson never had a clue.
Later, as they're leaving, Watson asks Holmes how he figured it all out. Holmes explains that the sudden dissolution of the League was suspicious, and Vincent Spaulding's insistence that Wilson apply for the position was the real clue.
Wait, you mean Spaulding wasn't just a random assistant? That's unbelievable. All that time, Wilson had no idea what was happening right under his feet.
And that's what made it the perfect crime. Almost. Holmes was just one step ahead. As they leave the bank, Merriweather can't thank Holmes enough. Without him, the bank would have lost a fortune in gold.
I bet Merriweather won't forget this night anytime soon.
Not a chance. On the way back to Baker Street, Watson finally asks, how did Holmes figure it all out so fast?
Yeah, I mean, noticing Spaulding's dirty trousers and connecting it to a tunnel is one thing, but how did he know for sure?
That's where Holmes's brilliance really shows. Remember when he knocked on the pavement in front of Wilson's shop with his walking stick?
Yeah, I thought that was just him being Holmes.
Not at all. He was listening to the sound. A solid floor would have given a dull thud, but Holmes heard a hollow ring, meaning there was a space beneath, exactly where a tunnel would be.
So he confirmed his theory right there on the street without anyone noticing. That's incredible.
That's Holmes for you. Always 2 steps ahead, even when it looks like he's just knocking on the ground for no reason.
And the whole time, Wilson had no clue what was happening right under his feet.
Exactly. And when they reach Baker Street, Holmes just lights his pipe and says the case was hardly a challenge.
Classic Holmes. solves a bank heist and calls it hardly a challenge.
That's what makes him Holmes. So, Holmes, ever the picture of calm, settles into his armchair with his pipe, while Watson, still marveling at the night's events, asks the question that's probably on everyone's mind. Why on earth would John Clay, a criminal of such intelligence and ambition, go through this elaborate scheme with the Red-Headed League?
Yeah, I mean, for someone so sharp, Clay took quite the risk with that ridiculous job posting. It seems unnecessary.
Exactly what Holmes thought. But that's the thing. The absurdity of the League was part of the plan. By keeping Wilson occupied every day, Spaulding, or rather John Clay, had free rein to dig the tunnel undisturbed.
I guess they figured no one would question such a bizarre job offer. And with Wilson's eagerness for easy money, they had the perfect cover.
Precisely. Holmes explains that criminals often rely on the assumption that ordinary people won't suspect something that seems too strange to be real. And in this case, the oddity of the League was the very reason it worked so well, until it didn't.
And once Holmes saw the connection, the bank's location, Spaulding's odd behavior, and that hollow sound from the pavement, it was game over.
Exactly. And as Holmes puts it, it wasn't genius, just observation and deduction, plain and simple.
Simple for him, maybe. For the rest of us, it's pure brilliance.
And with that, the Red-Headed League was dissolved, and a clever bank robbery was stopped before a single gold bar could be taken.
And once again, Holmes proves that nothing escapes his sharp eyes and quick mind.
If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery with us, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. Did you catch the clues before Holmes did? There's always more than meets the eye with these cases. And trust me, the next one will pull you in even deeper. We'll be back with a case of identity, where things aren't quite what they seem. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next adventure.
Subscribe for more content.